What is going on, guys? I hope the quarantine has been treating you well. Look, I know we talk a lot about monetary policy, about finance, investing, and so forth. Today I want to take a chance and talk about something else. How you can make the most out of this time right now, because I've been getting a lot of questions of, Felix, how long do you think this quarantine can last? How can I make the most of it? What should I be doing right now? And I think one of the most fundamental things we need to figure out is how can we be as productive as possible in this crazy time. Because one of the weird things is that almost any person, let's say under the age of 30, always wants to be their own boss. Everybody wants to, work from home. Like, it's so funny because all these online programs say work from home, be your own boss. But right now, almost everybody has the opportunity to, number one, work from home. It's not just an opportunity, you have to work from home. And to make things even better, a lot of people have extra time. So all of a sudden, if there's time where they could become their own boss, where they could work from home, but very few take advantage. So, and I think, one big reason why that's the case is simply because most people have never learned how to work from home. Most people have never learned how to be productive at home, because if they're not in an office environment, if they're not in a school environment, there's nobody kicking them in the butt to make sure that they perform at the best level. Because the truth of the matter is, when we're at home, it can seem like there's distractions lingering at every corner. We always run to the fridge checking for food. We always want to take a nap. We check in on TV shows. We have our phones out and nobody's saying, hey, can you get back to work? So it's so easy to get distracted. So this video, I just want to provide a couple guidelines, a couple tips on how we can train yourself to become more efficient when working from home. Number one, the very first thing you need to do is get out of bed. That might seem very obvious, but I think there's a good chunk of you that wakes up and likely spends the first 1, 2, maybe 3 hours of your day lying in bed. What are you doing? You're likely on your phone. Perhaps you even have a TV in your room, so you put on the TV first. And the bottom line is, most people, they waste a significant amount of time in the beginning of their day getting going, where they simply lie in bed and waste time, or maybe they keep snoozing. So the very first thing you must do is train yourself that even though, yes, you don't have to be at the office at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., you should be at your desk at that time, or you should be going on to your first activity, whether that's going for a run or reading a book, but you have to get moving. So the very first thing you have to do is actually physically get out of bed and make that a habit that you don't linger around. And the second part of that is then also to make your bed. And that has multiple reasons. There have been studies about how making your bed improves your psychological health. But also, once your bed is made, you're much less likely to go back into it, because at that point, that chapter is sealed, it's clean. And I would also recommend to take that a step further and to clean your room first thing in the morning, or perhaps last thing at night, because that way you maintain a good working environment and just a good environment in general. It's so easy to let your place turn into a shithole, excuse my French, when you work from home and live at home for 16 hours a day, where all of a sudden, stuff's lying around, laundry, trash, and so forth. The desk is cluttered. It's so important to create an environment where you can think clearly, thrive, be focused, be productive, and not constantly get distracted, not constantly, create the sense of overwhelm that's all around you because there's stuff lying everywhere. The second thing I highly recommend is to exercise daily. Look, right now, your movement is limited, likely to the most minimal it has ever been at. Because when you're confined to your house, to your home, to your apartment, to your room, you likely don't move around that much. You likely move from the bed to your chair, to the kitchen, to the bathroom, and so forth and back. So you have less movement than ever, which is why it's more important than ever that you exercise daily. So whether that's doing push-ups in your room, getting a pull-up bar, getting a boxing bag, going for runs, with a mask on, and getting your exercise in, this shouldn't be a once a week, twice a week. This should be a daily habit, because literally this will likely be the only time where you get any motion. And motion, in my eyes, has so many side benefits. Obviously, it prevents you from getting fat. But also, it brings oxygen to your lungs and to your brain. It helps you think more clearly. It's also a time when you get out of this environment, because sometimes your room can be almost like a cage where, you can't think bigger because you're so limited, so confined. So when you go exercise, when you go for that run, it really helps you, get better ideas, get some motion, get in a different emotional state too, and that will help you perform better in the long run. It will also make you a lot less antsy for those hours you have to simply sit at your desk and can't move. Number 3, get a proper desk. One thing I can't stress enough, it's so important, please don't work from your bed. Don't work from the couch. There's an entirely different energy when you work from your desk or from some type of desk. Can be the kitchen table, it doesn't matter. But when you sit at a proper desk, you have a much different body posture, and your body posture affects the energy that you work with. And also less distractions, because clearly if you sit on the couch, you might turn on the TV in the background, and all of a sudden over time, your level of productivity and your work standard starts deteriorating. The next layer to that is also to get dressed. Now, I know when you're at home, you technically don't have to get dressed. Even the famous Zoom calls where we just wear something top up and, we're still in our boxers. Yeah, it can work. And yeah, it's kind of funny. Honestly, sometimes it's enjoyable to live a little bit more lax. There's many days when I'll work with just basketball shorts, a tank top, sometimes, shirtless, whatever. You can do that once in a while. But over the long run, it really pays off to even put in the work when you work from home, to maybe even dress up, but at least put in the effort of getting cleaned up, looking good, because you know the saying, look good, feel good. So it's important that you put in that effort to put yourself together, because when you put yourself together, you go at your work with a completely different energy. Next up, it's so key that you get momentum early. You might have heard this before, but the energy and results of your entire day are usually determined in your very first few hours. You see, if you have this big goal that you're trying to accomplish in the day, and you simply can't get any move on it in the first few hours, you're likely not going to get it done. So whether you're going to achieve getting momentum by accomplishing a big goal early on, or by just knocking out a couple small ones, get rid of all the distractions early on, you had to send this email, you have to do this and that and that. If you just say, you know what, I'm going to get done with all the annoying work by, 11 a.m., 12 p.m., then you can say, wow, I've checked all these 8 out of 10 items off my list, and now I have the rest of the day to attack those big goals without any distraction. The one thing you shouldn't do is keep jumping back and forth, and that's where time gets lost. People try to attack the big problem, and then they take a break and to do the small thing. And then they go back to the big problem, and it takes them 20 minutes to get back into the material. And then they're like, oh, but let me do this quick thing real quick. So what you should do is either decide the first half of the day is getting rid of the 80% of small problems, or it is, let me focus on the 20% that are the big problems. But the worst thing you can do is constantly jump around, jump back and forth. So decide which route you like to take. Are you somebody that needs the instant gratification of completing small tasks? Then do that. Or if you're somebody who says, I don't care about the gratification, I feel much more accomplished if at the end of the day I can say I did this one big thing and it's done. Then do that first. But the bottom line is, get momentum from the start. And you can even accomplish this by adding a morning routine. And that can be things like, making your bed, reading a book, going for a run, making a healthy smoothie, meditating, calling a loved one, answering the most pressing 5 emails, whatever it is. But make yourself a morning routine, because that can allow you to get this momentum. Number 5, take walks. Now this is a little bit different than exercise, because exercise is supposed to be intense and push you to the limit. Whereas for me, taking walks, and I love to take walks, sometimes I take 2 or 3 a day. Why is that? Because obviously if I work 16-hour days, because quite frankly there's nothing else to do in quarantine, right? So I work all day long, and you sit at your desk for 6 hours at a time, it's nice to simply go out, get some fresh air, move around, because that allows you to think. That's really what I use walks for. Walks, that motion. If you've ever noticed you're trying to solve a problem and sometimes you walk in circles in your room, right? You can really expand this by just going out and going for a walk, because that really gives you the energy, the motion, and just the visual freedom, the visual space to think bigger. So I like to go for walks pretty regularly, because that allows me to, really deal with some of the complexer issues I'm dealing with, to come up with strategies, to come up with solutions, or sometimes just to take a break. And when I take breaks, I love listening to audiobooks. Right? So audiobooks that are good for walking are things like biographies, things that have a narrative. So when I do walks, I don't like to listen to very dense, let's say scientific stuff. That's something I like to do with a physical book in my hand. But walks are fantastic for things like biographies, where you can hear about, let's say, somebody's successful story, like let's say the biography of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, you name it. And get those insights as you walk and really take it in. And you'll notice that if you do take enough breaks, to get this physical motion in, you're able to work much longer hours, because most people would say, wow, I can't work more than 8 hours. I can honestly even only focus for 6 hours. But then once you start, separating and say, okay, let me do, 5 hours, go take a walk, do another 5 hours, take a walk, do another 5 hours, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I just did a 15-hour day, 16-hour day, and it seems pretty possible. And last but not least, know your times. I think it's so important to really create a system that works for you, because all our brains are wired a little bit differently. Some people are morning people. They're amazing at waking up at 5 a.m. and working then. Other people, they work best at night. So it's not about copying somebody's system. It's more so about knowing yourself and being honest with yourself. So for me, for example, I realized that my mind is best in the morning for processing complex subjects. So what do? My mornings, I actually don't start working. In my mornings, I consume information, meaning I spend my first 3 hours in the morning usually with reading, right? So I read really complex stuff like finance books, science books, etc. in the morning, because that's when my brain is the most receptive to new ideas, because it hasn't been cluttered and distracted by all these different factors, price tickers, and social media. So for me, the morning is about processing information. And the afternoon is more so about the analytical side. That's when, I do trading, I create trading systems, work on my businesses. And then for me, the evenings are the more creative side, where I come up with some really cool stuff. Like, for example, that can be anything from creative writing to writing blog posts to creating content, to coming up with like new ideas, new solutions. But the bottom line is there is no one size fits all, in my opinion. It all depends on you as a person. So just take notes, like journal, and figure out, today I was really productive doing this work. Ask yourself, well, what time was it? What time of the day was it? Perhaps you start seeing patterns where you say, I'm really good at analytical work early in the mornings. Or perhaps you say, I am my most creative in the early afternoon. I don't know, everybody works differently. But the bottom line is you have to know your times, and that takes trial and error. That means trying all these different things at different times of the day often enough, where after a while you start knowing yourself and you start getting a feeling for, this is my peak hour, this is my peak performance, and then everything else has to wait. That means, in the mornings, I don't like to get distracted by email or anything else. I don't even check it, I don't open it, I get my reading done. And then at noon, I'll start opening it up, and then I'll do that. So it's all about really just figuring out your pace. Guys, at the end of the day, working from home can be amazing, or it can suck, depending on whether or not you've taken the time to really master it. Because once you've mastered it, you can work on your own time, you can focus really on your strengths. Because the last part we talked about knowing your times, that is a luxury that you don't have when you work for somebody else. Because when you work a regular 9-to-5 job, imagine you're somebody who works best at night, yet you're always forced to come in the morning. Right? That no longer applies when you master yourself and you know what, this is where I work best. So it really pays off, but it does take active work and it takes discipline. People think working from home, it's like this, this kind of like online promise, like, oh, work from home, get rich, blah, blah, blah. No, it is about discipline. It's about getting out of bed. It's about making your bed. It's about cleaning up your room. It's about showering and getting dressed when you technically don't have to. It's about physically exercising every single day, just so that you have that energy to really go at your work. And then not working from the couch or from bed as you would hope you would do when you work from home. No, it's about actually sitting down at a proper desk and doing work and staying organized. Listen, working from home is awesome, but it's still work. So if you want to make the most out of this quarantine, and for example, Los Angeles County just announced this will last until the end of July at least. So we've got a lot more time ahead of us. So I recommend you take this to heart, start looking at your day, see how can you structure differently, and what kind of small habits can you implement to squeeze the most out of this time. Because trust me, the biggest ideas, the biggest companies, the biggest inventions, the biggest YouTube stars, the biggest anything are rising right now. This time of quarantine separates the boys from the men, the winners from the losers, because many people will take this as a chance to kick back, and just like watch Netflix all day long for 6 months. Others will take this as a chance, a once in a lifetime opportunity to master themselves, to build that side hustle, to master investments, to really build the thing that they always wanted, because guess what? Right now you have a chance. Anybody who's watching this has an internet connection. Anybody who's watching this has a laptop, a phone, or something. So you have the tools to really make huge leaps because anything can be learned online. Anything can be built online. So I highly put to heart that you use this time to create your legacy. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, go leave a comment. As always, hit that subscribe button. We need to get those numbers up because I'm trying to help as many people as possible. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.